Have you ever felt, in the middle of the night, that there was something, or someone, watching you, even though you were completely alone in the room? No, you're not going crazy. And, above all, this is not paranoia. What you are feeling may be the echo of a spiritual call, a sign that the unseen world has acknowledged your presence. God's chosen ones know, when the clock strikes those quiet hours of dawn, something awakens, something that human words can barely explain. Most people ignore this, rationalize it, think it's just anxiety or stress. But you feel differently. And do you know why? Because not everyone is being prepared. You are. And that's why these nocturnal spiritual symptoms appear: shivers without wind, pressure in the chest, dreams that look more like battles. The pain of the chosen ones does not happen for nothing. God's silence is training. And the feeling of being watched, actually. It's just the beginning. In this content, you will understand why spiritual vigils call you, what is behind spiritual attacks at night, and why their light attracts so much the gaze of invisible forces. You will discover that the spirit world does not sleep, and that your awakening bothers you more than you think. Get ready to recognize signs, strengthen your faith, and understand, once and for all, what is behind this silent call that visits you in the most unlikely hours. If you've ever felt like there was something there, in the dark, comment below on the number 3, which represents spirit, soul and body, because this content is for you. There is a sensation that insists on knocking on the door of the soul in the middle of the night, an invisible presence that makes no noise, but weighs in the air. God's chosen know this kind of silence well, the one that seems to contain 1,000 unspoken words. It's not paranoia. It is a silent call, which crosses the spiritual world to touch those who carry a greater purpose. This presence often manifests itself when everything around seems calm, but inside, the spirit vibrates in alert. In many accounts, this dawn energy turns into a kind of internal whisper, as if the heart is trying to say something that the mind does not yet understand. It is at this moment that the nocturnal spiritual signs appear: a shiver without wind, a sudden change in temperature, a restlessness in the gaze. They are codes of the invisible, which do not speak with reason, but with intuition. And those who are sensitive feel it in their skin, even without being able to explain it in words. Faith and fear take turns at these times. One minute you feel protected, the next, completely exposed. This feeling of being watched seems absurd, until you realize that there is a spiritual vigil going on, only you don't see it. The soul knows that it is being examined, even if the body is motionless in a dark bed. Spiritual symptoms come as a reminder that God's silence is also a language, and one must learn to listen to it. Imagine this as a spiritual preparation. A silent workout in which you just need to exist, and resist. People think that battles are made up of swords and shouts, but the real war of the chosen takes place in silence, at dawn, inside dark rooms where only the inner light illuminates. It is no coincidence that the greatest spiritual attacks at night come after days of great decisions or before great revelations. The spiritual world always acts before the physical world. And here's a secret that few tell: if you've ever had the feeling that there's something watching you when everything is quiet, perhaps you are not only being watched, but also summoned. There is a divine call being made, and not everyone has ears to hear. Therefore, when the spiritual wakefulness begins and the eyes are still closed, the real examination is just beginning. While the world sleeps, something lights up behind the scenes of the invisible. The dawn, apparently calm, is when the spiritual world moves with more intensity. God's chosen ones often feel this as a subtle call, an invitation to spiritual vigil. Even with the body exhausted, the soul awakens, as if something beyond logic is pulling at its thoughts. It is during this time that the feeling of being watched intensifies, as if invisible eyes accompany each breath. It's not just insomnia. It is as if the very energy of dawn whispered secrets to those who know how to listen. Many wake up between 3 and 4 a.m., for no apparent reason, and feel the weight of an invisible presence that gives no respite. There are those who find it strange, but for those who live in this frequency, these are nocturnal spiritual signs. A touch on the shoulder that wasn't there. A light noise where there was no one. A sudden cold, no wind. Nothing is random. This spiritual vigil is not random, it is strategy. The enemy attacks when everything is quiet, because he knows that, at that time, the chosen one is more sensitive, more vulnerable, or more open to the spiritual world. But just as there is spiritual attack at night, there is also divine protection, angelic visitations, and silent revelations. Heaven works when earth rests. And the chosen ones live this tension between faith and fear more intensely than they would like. A good example of this is when someone wakes up with their heart racing, as if they had run a marathon without moving from their place. This is a spiritual symptom, the spirit running, fighting, being trained while the body rests. And if when you open your eyes, you feel that something remained in the room even without seeing anything, maybe he really was. The invisible presence of those who guard, or those who attack, is never as close as it is at this moment. Therefore, when someone says they can't sleep properly at night, it's worth asking, is it just stress? Or is the spirit world demanding your attention? The signs are there, but only the chosen ones understand. And it is when the night seems denser that the light and shadow begin to reveal intentions. There is a truth that few have the courage to accept: God's chosen are not only observed, they are tested. Constantly. The feeling of being watched is not just a nuisance, it's a rehearsal. Light and shadow take turns in the role of examiners, analyzing how the spirit reacts to the pain of the chosen, fear, uncertainty and faith. It is not punishment. It is spiritual preparation. Everything is being measured: patience, emotional response, constancy. During these tests, small situations arise that seem trivial, but are not. A family conflict that comes out of nowhere, an inexplicable delay, a feeling of loneliness that comes without knocking. They are subtle traps of the spiritual world to see how the heart behaves. The spiritual symptoms manifest themselves: emotional fatigue without a physical cause, racing thoughts, heaviness in the chest. The shadow probes its breaches. Light, on the other hand, observes your steadfastness. Most people don't even realize they're being evaluated. But the chosen ones, they feel it. They perceive the difference between a natural challenge in life and a spiritual attack at night. They know when a situation has been set up just to test their faith. Has it ever happened that you almost exploded and, for some reason, something held you back? The light was there, registering. And the shadow, cheering for its fall. This spiritual tension is daily, especially at dawn. Those who understand this process start to act differently. Instead of reacting angrily, he begins to take a deep breath. Instead of getting into conflicts, he chooses silence. The inner mentor of the chosen ones always advises, calm down, you are being watched. And it's not just for enemies, the heavens are watching too. Even his tears are noted. Every gesture, every choice, every unspoken word. All of this is a way of responding to the invisible exam. And you know the most curious? The more the chosen one resists and stands firm, the more intense the test becomes. It is as if the light says, you are ready for more. And the shadow thought, I must find your weakness. This spiritual tug-of-war intensifies in the silence of God, where it seems that nothing happens. But everything is happening. And it is precisely in this scenario that the mission begins to reveal itself. Few realize it, but there's a reason God's chosen ones seem to attract so much spiritual attention: they shine. Even without knowing it, your actions, thoughts, and intentions emit a light that tears through the invisible. And in the spirit world, light attracts, both good and evil. That is why, the more a chosen one awakens, the stronger the feeling of being watched. Your essence begins to emit a signal that cannot be ignored. This glow does not come from external spotlights, but from quiet intimacy with the divine. It grows in the early hours of prayer, in the moments when God's silence seems like abandonment, but in fact it is stoning. The energy of dawn is like fuel for this invisible beacon. And the more intense your spiritual wakefulness, the stronger your light will be, and the more visible you become to the spiritual world. It's a quiet but powerful exchange. And here comes an important detail: you don't choose this mission, it chooses you. Many feel this through spiritual symptoms that are confused with anxiety or insomnia, when, in fact, they are alerts. A restlessness that pulsates, a call that is not silenced. This divine call is subtle but persistent. It pokes you until you understand, there is something bigger waiting for you, something that only you can do. A practical example of this are people who, without explanation, begin to attract outbursts, requests for help, advice. They think, why does everyone come to me? Simple, they are glowing, and in the dark, everyone runs towards the light. This spiritual light does not need religion, it needs consciousness. And when the chosen one takes on this mission, he begins to understand that everything he has experienced so far has been part of a spiritual preparation plan. But that's precisely where spiritual enemies come into play, because they recognize this light before you even understand what it means. And when this happens, the spiritual attack at night becomes more common, more intense, more strategic. Many people do not understand why, just when they decide to change their lives or get closer to God, spiritual attacks increase. But God's chosen ones know, darkness always reacts when the light comes on. In the spiritual world, its essence is visible as a flag. And when it begins to shine brighter, spiritual enemies notice, and act. It's not punishment, it's confirmation, you're awakening to who you are. These enemies are not scary caricatures. They are spiritual intelligences that detect purposes. They see when someone is in spiritual preparation and try to sabotage it before it takes hold. Attacks don't always come as nightmares, sometimes they're persistent negative thoughts, meaningless fights, emotional blocks. All to divert the chosen one from his divine call. And always, almost always, these attacks start at night. It is during spiritual wakefulness, when the soul is most sensitive, that these enemies approach. Some wake up with the feeling of being watched or even paralyzed. Others feel touches, pressures on the body, shadows in the room. These nocturnal spiritual signs are not hallucinations, they are alerts. They are saying, they know who you are, even if you don't know it completely yet. And that's why you need to strengthen your faith, even if you're afraid. The good news is that if they attack you, it's because they've already recognized you as a threat. And that's more powerful than it sounds. It means that your light is bothering you. Therefore, praying before bed, keeping your mind clear and your spirit steady are basic attitudes, but with high impact. Dawn becomes his silent battlefield. And every choice you make, even in the dark, carries weight in the spirit world. This struggle is not visible, but its effects are manifested in their daily lives. And the more you resist, the more light and shadow position themselves around you. And it is precisely in the midst of this conflict that a secret begins to reveal itself. The silence of dawn hides one of the greatest portals of spiritual connection. There is a power hidden in the silence of the dawn that God's chosen ones learn to recognize over time. It's not just the absence of noise, it's a kind of dense peace, loaded with meanings. In this interval between the deep night and the sunrise, the spiritual world becomes more accessible. God speaks, angels work, and even silence screams instructions. The dawn energy is almost palpable, like an invitation to enter a sacred place. What many call insomnia may actually be a divine call. This is when the spirit wakes up before the body, wanting to move, pray, meditate, or simply exist in the invisible presence that fills the room. It is not uncommon that, at this time, the nocturnal spiritual signs intensify: goosebumps, quick visions, a sudden clarity of thought. These are all responses from the spirit world trying to align its essence with its purpose. This night portal is opened only when the soul is in stillness. That is why the noise of the day, distractions, and the rush drown out these connections. The dawn demands surrender. It requires willingness. Spiritual wakefulness, in this context, is not an effort, it is an opportunity. The chosen one who understands this transforms the dawn into a temple. And it is there, between light and shadow, that many revelations are released. Want a simple example? Start with a notebook next to your bed. Every time you wake up in the middle of the night with a strong thought, write it down. You'll notice patterns, repetitions, and maybe even messages. God's silence is not absence, it is code. And those who are willing to decipher it begin to see more clearly what is to come. The answers do not come with noise, but with delivery. It is in this space between the physical and the spiritual that many chosen ones perceive, for the first time, invisible touches, lucid dreams, and sensations that defy logic. And it is in this subtle field, often ignored, that invisible looks begin to manifest, intensifying the spiritual symptoms in an almost undeniable way. It is in the quietest hours of the night that the signs take shape. For God's chosen ones, dreams are not just dreams, they are messages, warnings, training. And not always smooth. Sometimes they come as true spiritual films, with pressures in the chest, faceless voices and sensations that pierce the flesh. Who hasn't woken up sweating, with their heart racing, feeling that it wasn't just a dream? This is the spirit world touching your reality. Then there are the invisible touches, a hand on the shoulder, a shiver that seems to walk through the skin, an invisible presence that remains even after you turn on the light. It's as if someone was there, but it wasn't. These spiritual symptoms are frightening at first, of course. But then, the chosen one understands that there is a purpose behind it. The pain of the chosen ones is not only emotional, it also comes from these contacts of the unseen. And what about sleep paralysis? One of the phenomena most reported by those who live in intense spiritual vigil. The body does not respond, but the consciousness is alert. It is there that many feel the energy of dawn in its densest, most charged form, sometimes dark, sometimes sacred. Light and shadow vie for territory while the spirit watches. And even though it sounds like a nightmare, it's more real than it seems. These invisible looks, so present at night, are not madness. They are entities, energies, and even angels and demons analyzing your spiritual field. Some come to protect. Others, to test. And others, unfortunately, to attack. Therefore, keeping the environment spiritually clean, with prayers, soft music or psalms, is not superstition. It's strategy. You're being watched, and you have to decide who you're going to meet when you arrive. These experiences are common among the chosen, but few people talk about them for fear of seeming weird. But in fact, they are symptoms of a preparation that is in progress. And that's when you start to understand all this, who realizes that he has never really been alone. The biggest lie the enemy tries to tell you is that you're alone. But God's chosen ones know, or feel, that there is something greater guiding every step, even in the darkest dawns. That feeling of being watched, which used to generate fear, begins to make sense. It is not persecution. It is spiritual vigilance, but it is also training. You are being molded, prepared, aligned with a mission that has yet to fully reveal itself. This preparation is not light. The pain of the chosen ones is not gratuitous. It's like a warrior's training, silent, constant, sometimes exhausting, but necessary. The spirit world knows exactly where to strengthen you. Every spiritual attack at night, every sign, every symptom. All of this makes up an invisible map of learning. And even if you don't understand it now, one day you'll look back and see, it was being polished. During this process, the divine call becomes clearer. She doesn't scream, she insists. A desire to serve, an impulse to help, a restlessness that won't cease, all signs that something is brewing inside you. The energy of dawn begins to become more familiar, more comfortable. And even in the midst of the struggle, there is peace. A peace that comes from knowing that you are exactly where you need to be. Those who go through this learn to trust, even without seeing. He learns to pray, even without an immediate answer. He learns that God's silence is sometimes protection, not absence. And he begins to realize that all those sleepless nights, they were meetings. Encounters with the divine, encounters with your own spirit. You were being attuned to heaven, without even knowing it. And now that you understand all this, maybe you're ready to accept something even deeper. It's not you who chose this journey. She is the one who chose you. And if you've made it this far, it's because the next step is about to present itself. After all this, tell me, do you still think it was just a random shiver? A strange dream? Or can you now see how much of this was all part of something bigger? God's chosen ones do not go through these experiences for nothing. Every symptom, every feeling of being watched, every spiritual attack at night. All of this has a purpose. You're being trained, aligned, molded for something big. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge now? Will you continue to ignore the signs, or will you start to position yourself spiritually? Are you going to let fear stop you, or are you going to use faith as a shield? The spirit world is watching your response, and your next move could change everything. Because if you've come this far, it's because you were chosen to listen to it. So, how about putting this learning into practice? Wake up a little earlier tomorrow, say a simple prayer, write down what you feel. You don't have to understand everything at once, you just have to be willing. The rest, heaven does. And remember, the more prepared you are, the lighter the journey will be. Tell me here in the comments, what was the strongest sign you ever felt during the night? Or, if you prefer, comment on the word, "I woke up," to show that this message has reached you. Oh, and don't forget, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Because here, we talk about what the spiritual world already knows. But few have the courage to reveal it.